So hello, Marin again. Thank you so much for being with us today again.
My pleasure.
And thank you again for taking some time to talk to me, because I know you're very busy at the moment. So the subject of the day for me is a big one for me to understand, because it's about the layout of the orchestra and the choice in deciding whether you put the violas on the right of the orchestra, whether you put the basses at the back or behind the cellos. And sometimes, especially for composers such as Mahler or Berlioz, I wonder how to define the layout. Would you rather look at the writing, or is it more a sound relating? I know there are traditions as well.
Yes, I mean, it's a great question, because it's a question that I still grapple with even now in my career. So it's also a way to influence the acoustic of whatever hall you're playing and bring out certain aspects of an orchestra that perhaps are less obvious. I think, generally speaking, my default setup is the American setup, which is first, seconds, probably violas, cello, bassi. That's my default. But I would say that I experiment a lot with the layout. So I really felt, for example, in the hall in Sao Paulo, which is a beautiful hall, that the basses needed a little more boosting. So I switched the violas to the outside, put the cello where the violas were, and put the basses behind the cello. Not necessarily, I tried that too, along the back wall, but just to push the sound out. Then of course you have to take into account not just your vision for the acoustic, but also the comfort of the musicians and
of course.
their willingness. So, I mean, I would say that, I try to really work with the acoustic of the hall first. Number two, I try to work with the strengths of the orchestra to try to boost the strengths as much as possible. And not that it's in this order. I also try to work with the musicians to see what is comfortable for them. And I think if you can involve them in the process, it also helps, listening in the hall, doing things like that. And of course, you want to be historically informed. I think that's quite interesting as well. Of course, when you're doing classical repertoire, if you want to split the violins, which is very common. When I work with the Orchestra of the Age of Enlightenment, they set up in many, many different ways, because apparently it wasn't really prescribed exactly. Mm-hmm. So sometimes the cello will be to my left, sometimes the cello will be to my right, something, so I've seen that setup change dramatically. But a little bit of advice for young conductors going into an orchestra. I would ask in advance what's the string setup for your orchestra. And I would, if you really feel passionate about changing it, try to find out whether it's a volatile issue or something that will cause them distress, the musicians, because you really don't want to walk into an environment where you've already caused them distress and you haven't even been there. Mm. So that's my only little bit of advice.
And also, like when you guest conduct and you don't rehearse in the main hall where you're going to do the concert, yeah. If you are not in the hall and just for the general rehearsal, you cannot change it straight away. So you have to probably. So what would be your advice about not rehearsing?
Well, again, I think the orchestra, the personnel manager, or the operations manager, whoever is in charge of the setup, and the personnel manager usually knows the sort of psychology behind the setup a little bit. So I would probably talk to both of them. If I came to an orchestra where we rehearse in a rehearsal hall and only get the general, I would probably go and look at the hall. If there's another concert going on, sometimes they rent out the hall. That's why you're not in it. I try to go and listen a little bit, see what's going on. It's all about being actively knowledgeable. So try to get as much information as possible. But, by speaking to the people who know the orchestra the best, your artistic counterpart there, you know, whoever you worked with, you know, ask their advice. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? And then try to be adaptable. Don't get your mindset that this is the way it must be.
Yeah, great. One more question about the basses at the back, because I have never done that before, and my main reason for that is it's very disconnected from the cello. I'm really talking at the back behind the wings. Why do conductors think that it's possibly well, I mean, the only reason why I think they might do this is just really to carry the sound from the back. But how somehow they have to relate to the cellos and stay connected with maybe meters
Well, I
apart?
think that is the challenge. Of course, when you look at some of the old photographs of Mahler and his orchestra, the basses are in the back. So I think that there's historical precedence. But I find I actually love the sound of the basses propelling the whole orchestra. So it really is pushing the sound. Their foundation is pushing the sound out. But I agree that it's too far, especially with our huge orchestras today in percussion. So I've tried, that's why I tried a few times to set up the basses normally where maybe the trombones are in a bus-like formation, so that they're still pushing out, but they're still connected to the cello. But I don't think there is, to be honest, I don't think there is an ideal setup. Someone is always either uncomfortable because there's a trumpet playing or a piccolo playing, or they feel too far away. You know, even when you split the violins, I mean, if you're in the back of the seconds, you never hear the first violins. You can never feel that contact. So I think always understand that nothing is ideal, and somebody's always going to have a problem with it. Try to mitigate their concerns as much as you can, but also try to stick with what you really believe is the best sound. So again, it's so much of conducting is about balancing expectations and managing people.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you so much for your advice in there.
Sure.
Thanks, Marin. See you later.
Thank you. Thanks.